right, I'm Chris Avena with American Outdoor News, and spring is in the air. We have Josh Bendoski from Bendoski Power Fishing, and he's also a writer for American Outdoor News. Josh, thanks for taking the time for being with us today.
Hey, I'm super excited to be on here. I really love the magazine. I love being a part of it, being able to contribute to it, and being able to, help people catch more fish. That's really, I'm in the fishing section, of course, and that's really what we're all about. And I'm just really excited to be on the show. So yeah, let's get into it.
I know you're a big fisherman. You're always posting your videos. You got a YouTube channel. How'd you get hooked on fishing?
That's a good story. I'll take just a minute here and relay it. The folks out there that are fishermen, most of you, I would imagine, have heard of the Provo River. Provo River is world famous fly fishing. I mean, people come here from Europe, basically from all corners of the world to fish the Provo River. And I just, I happened to grow up about 3 blocks from Provo River. And
wow.
So just as a kid, I used to, every day after school, I would just walk. My mom would let me just walk down to the river with my fishing pole. And so I used to fish Provo River every single day. As a young boy, my grandfather came down and on my YouTube channel, we don't feature Provo River that much because river fishing for me is kind of slow fishing. I mean, a good day, even on Provo River, a great day on Provo River, you may catch, I don't know, maybe 10 at the most. I mean, you got to be really slick to get 10 in a day on Provo River, but it's just world famous. It's one of the most popular rivers in the whole world for fly fishing. And so I do fish it occasionally, and I'm going to feature it in a lot more of my videos. I just, as I grew up in Utah, which is phenomenal outdoors fishing. We've got so much stuff going on up here in the Rocky Mountains. I got more into lake fishing because, a lot of it, and if you look at my YouTube videos, if you ever check that out, I like to catch, 30, 40, 50, 100 fish a day. And so the lakes here in the Rocky Mountains have that potential. You can go out there and catch 100 fish a day, on a good day, and that just doesn't happen on the river. So, but we fish all over the Provo River. So we fish Strawberry. We fish. There's different lakes that feed Provo River, and then Jordanelle, and then Deer Creek, and all these big lakes up here. They all feed this river with big, beautiful trout. And so, when I just had gotten older and I'd gotten a vehicle, and so I fished Provo River. Like I said, until from probably 8 or 9 years old till I was in my teens when I got a vehicle. Then I started going to the lakes. But the lakes here offer huge trout, just big, beautiful trout. And so that's really what got me into fishing. I just, I didn't have much to do after school, and so I just would walk. And then if you're familiar with the area, and some people are, but the hospital there's a humongous hospital that it bought my mom's house. It bought everything. So the actual home that I grew up in is a parking lot now for the hospital, but it was like 3 blocks from the river. And I spent years and years of my life just fishing Provo River, and then it just grew into something bigger than that. So that's kind of the longer story, but that's how it happened.
So now you're a lake fisherman. What's your favorite fish to go for?
Utah, it's funny because we catch so many trout, and Utah is famous for trout. That's really what the fly fishing here is all about. But Provo River ends at my favorite lake of all. It's called Utah Lake. It's where Provo River ends. I mean, it's one of the most famous rivers in the world ends, and there's no trout in Utah Lake because it's just low enough that it's too warm. The trout don't go down the river that far. The walleye do. The walleye come through, and actually they're running right now, but the walleye come down. But my favorite fish is catfish, because in Utah, although we have really big trout, not like, ocean, it's not like ocean trout, so they're not humongous, but they're really big and beautiful. But catfish, for me, they are so big and so strong. And actually, just last night, I caught like 25 catfish. They're just starting to heat up right now. And there'll be a YouTube video coming out on that soon. But yeah, catfish, they are in Utah and in the Rocky Mountains in general, and actually across the whole Rocky Mountains. Although trout is the most famous fish, catfish are way bigger and way stronger than any trout that I've ever caught, and they are just such a blast. You
do any noodling?
So we don't have the type of catfish. That's a funny. I'll just tell a very brief story here. That's funny because we don't have. I'm not sure what type of catfish you can noodle for, but it's one that doesn't bite. I know that for sure because they stick their hand in their mouth. Because I mean, I've been bitten. I used to hold catfish when I was younger before I got bit a handful of times by the mouth like a bass. You know what I mean? You see people holding bass by the mouth. A catfish, or at least the types of catfish we have here, they will clamp down on your thumb so hard. I mean, they will bite you for real. And they don't have teeth, but they have power. They're if you've seen my
they got like a hard jawbone.
Yeah, but more importantly, they got like a crushing power. That's how they crush their prey. They crunch down on them really, really hard. And so, in fact, one of my YouTube videos, I got bit so hard by a catfish, I couldn't even believe how hard that thing. So I don't actually stick my hand in catfish's mouths anymore because of
really a wise decision.
Yeah. But noodling, I definitely want to try noodling, but it's and I wish I knew off the top of my head, and I apologize for not having this information in front of me, but it's a different kind of catfish that you can put your hand in their mouth, because the ones here, I mean, I have stuck my hand in their mouths and they bite super, super hard. I mean, it is.
Well, I think the only thing that would keep me from trying that is that you don't know what's in that hole. You stick your hand in that hole. What if there's a snapping turtle in there?
That's true. And there's these really pretty girls I follow on Instagram. What's that one young gal's name? She's super famous, Hannah or something like that.
I don't know.
Whatever it is, she's always out noodling and stuff, and she's gained a huge following. But man, they must know. It must be different. They must know something we don't, because she's not afraid to tap in her mouth. And they go down in there, and so yeah, noodling. I want to try it. I want to do it, but not with the type of catfish we have here, because they will clamp your arm. You know what I mean? I mean, catfish. That's one of the reasons I love that's one of the reasons I love catfish in general, is because they are so powerful. That is a very powerful fish. And sticking your hand in their mouth, I want to reach out to that community and go up there. I think it's in Kentucky or something, like somewhere back east. I know for sure.
They have them in like Louisiana and down south. Now,
I want to try that out.
You said you're going to be doing a little bit more fly fishing this season.
Yeah, the reason for that, I want to, just because it's so famous. I mean, there's people that on their bucket list, and it's interesting that the Provo River is so popular. But I mean, so I just need to get out there. I need to go out there and fly fish and catch a bunch of and do some YouTube videos on it, because it's right here. I mean, right now I'm probably 2.5 minutes from Provo River. Which is a big deal for a lot of fishermen. I mean, like I said, people come from all over the world to fish here, fly fish, and they miss.
How do you get prepared to go fly fishing? What do you watch, like The River Runs Through It with Brad Pitt, and you get your own rhythm going?
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned Brad Pitt, but also right here, Provo River runs right through Sundance. Sundance is only 20 minutes from my house. Sundance is owned by Robert Redford.
Sure.
I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on here. There's so much outdoor stuff here. But yeah, fly fishing is big in Utah. I mean, really, really, really big. But you know, as I mentioned, I have fished that river for years and years and years. I mean, I fished that river even to this day. Although I don't fish it very often. I've fished that river. I don't know that I could ever fish anywhere else more than I had fished the Provo River, just because I fished it every single day for, you know, the first part of my whole life was
You're
fishing that
sticking
river.
with what you know.
Yeah. So I just, you know, but the truth is, it gets fished so hard, it gets a lot of pressure. In fishing, we call it pressure. It gets pressured so hard that there's just not that many big fish. And you know, it's funny when you live here, and you know, when you live here as versus just flying in. When you live here, you know that the trout in that river are small, and people are always, and I'm happy for them. They're proud, you know, to catch a 12-inch trout or a 9-inch trout out of that river. Which if they would have known that, you know, an extra 20-minute drive to Strawberry, which is a beautiful reservoir we have here in Utah. I mean, you could be catching 23, 24-inch trout and catching them by the 30s or 40s, or even get up to 100. Some days on a really perfect day, 100 of these big trout, you know. And so,
Yeah.
you know, the fishing here is just absolutely phenomenal in the Rocky Mountains. It's just amazing, you know, and I'm just lucky to be here and lucky to have the opportunity to, you know, do the YouTube thing and just help people catch fish, because you know, and we are going to tour. I want to mention, we are going to tour too. You know, most of our YouTube stuff is in Utah at the moment, but this next season we are going to go all through the Rocky Mountains, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho. There's so much good fishing up here, and we just like to, you know, what we do is we go out and we show people what works. That's one of the main things about fishing. In fact, it's one of my tips that I give on my channel often, is that, you know, if you can talk to a local or somebody who has fished that water, because every body of water, and even in, like, some of our lakes are really, really big, and I'm sure everywhere that's the same thing, right?
Sure.
Where this side of the lake, maybe the north end, let's just say the north end of the lake, certain tactics work. There's certain things that work over there phenomenally well, but with these really, really, like, Utah Lake is monster size, but in the south end of the lake, it's a totally different setup that works. You know, it's because these lakes are so big. But then we also have some of the smaller ones where the same thing works, you know, throughout the whole lake. But some of our lakes are so big that each harbor even has kind of a slightly different system, and it's just cool. You know, it's cool to kind of share all the different intricacies of what works at the different places, and elevations too. Elevation is a big deal here in Utah too. In Utah, we have, as I mentioned, Provo River, which is world famous for trout, which ends in a lake that is too warm for them to even go into. I've never seen anyone catch a trout out of Utah Lake, but, you know, 5 minute drive up Provo River, world famous fly fishing, you know, for trout. It's very interesting because, you know, the temperature of the water, it's just, we have so much diversity here. It's just pretty interesting.
Sure.
You know, I mean, that's just really what it is. It's intriguing.
You know what? We're going to take a quick break, but when to talk about some of our sponsors in a second. But when we get back, I want to talk about what you would, how you would get somebody into fishing freshwater, because we know it's very different than fishing saltwater. What steps they should take, what they should do, and how they should go about getting started. But we're going to acknowledge Phone Scope, one of our sponsors. Scoped Industries, always coming up with innovative products, the Pyro Putty and their lighters and things of that nature. Definitely check them out. Underwood Ammo, definitely check out Underwood Ammo if you're a hunter or a target shooter. You got to check out their ammo. And of course, Hunt of a Lifetime. They are providing hunts to sick children. We're going to take a break and hear from them in a second.
We love our children. We protect them, we guide them, we prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do, from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstance, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the hardest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a nonprofit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference.
Okay, and we're back. Josh, somebody just starting to get into fishing, whether an adult or a teen or a child, how do they go about it? What's the best advice you would give them?
So, this was actually mentioned in one of the articles. And if you haven't checked it out, first of all, I want to say thanks to the sponsors. Sponsors, they really, really help the industry. I mean, it's a big deal. So thanks. And I'm glad that we were able to highlight these guys. And I'm grateful to every one of them for jumping on and helping us out here. So just getting into fishing. Fishing is a very relaxing, it's therapeutic, really it is. And it's just an amazing way to spend your time. But bait fishing, and I do want to get into barometric pressure too after this, because it's very, very, very important, extremely important, especially for somebody who's just getting into fishing to understand barometric pressure. But bait fishing is, so there's fly fishing, which we've talked about, which is takes a lot more skill. It takes a lot more understanding of what the fish are interested in, which is one of the draws, for advanced fishermen. But if you're just getting into fishing, one of the best things that you can do is in Utah, I would say in Utah, you can have 3 hooks. And that's pretty much a staple across, but you always want to check the guidebook where you're at, right? So, like, for example, in Utah, we can't use live minnows. We have to use dead ones. They have to be dead minnows. There's just certain things, excuse me, that need to be, you just always want to make sure you check the guidebook, because you want to just follow the regulations in your area. But bait fishing is the easiest type of fishing, in my opinion. What you want to do is, and this is this is in one of the articles. I really dig deep into it in an article for American Outdoor News. So make sure you check that out. But Utah and most states allow for 3 hooks. That's why you see a lot of those lures. Like you may see a jerkbait that has 3. I wish I had one right here in my hand, but I don't. But that has 3 hooks. So every state, and even actually bodies of water, generally have their own regulations too. So, but 3 hooks. And so with bait fishing, my recommendation always is you do a 3 hook system. It's what I call it a buffet, but you want to do usually a night crawler, always a night crawler, because that's just, fish have been eating worms since the beginning of fish and worms. I'm not even sure how they became that way, but they are married. They've been married since the dawn of time, I guess would probably be the way to say it. So throw a worm, and then in your area, you want to look at, sometimes it's power bait. If you're fishing for trout, then maybe the second hook has power bait on it, if you're going for trout. Or if you're going for, you may put shrimp on it. You got to kind of figure out or look around or ask around, which is a big tip in fishing, is jump onto the local, we use Facebook primarily, but there's groups, there's fishing groups everywhere. Sure. And if you just ask the locals what works, but you put 3 different types of bait: a worm, and let's take Utah Lake, a worm, a piece of chicken breast, raw, and then a piece of whatever the natural food source is in that water. This happens to be white bass, just because there's maybe billions with a B in this lake that I like to fish at. Anyways, and then you just wait, and that is the easiest way to fish, because you just wait, and then a fish will grab it, and a lot of times they'll be hooked before you even, you don't have to set the hook. So, with bass fishing, a lot of times people look at bass fishing and they say, oh yeah, you got to set the hook really hard, which is true with bass fishing. But if you're just bait fishing, you just kind of wait, and if you're just barely getting into fishing and you're just kind of getting, to where you're used to it, bait fishing is one of the easiest ones to do because they will eat whatever it is on that hook. Where,
Sure.
with bass fishing or some of the other ones, you're tricking them with a fake lure, and then you got to hook them. So if you're just getting into fishing and you're just getting, just go out there, throw some, different types of food, their food, on your hook, and just toss it out there, and then you can just wait, and a lot of times, with Utah Lake, even you can catch 20, 30, 40 fish in an evening.
Sure.
With that system, you know what I mean? And then you can go into the more advanced fly fishing, you know what I mean, like the Provo River fly fishing. But those are they take a lot more skill. So if you're just getting into it, if you're just getting into fishing, if this is like a new thing, I would say try bait fishing first, because it's just so simple and it's tremendously fun.
I found that bacon works too.
It could. I've never used bacon, but that actually could be, because that's a good, strong, oily.
It's the oil gets into the water, and it's an attractant. I mean, who don't like bacon? Absolutely. Everyone likes bacon. Even the fish like bacon.
I may go out tonight. We've got a storm coming in right here, so that kind of leads into barometric pressure. But we got a storm coming in, which usually means good fishing. So I think I think it would make sense to transition into barometric pressure right now, because if you're new to fishing, this is one of the biggest deals. Let's get a little water there. One of the biggest deals in fishing is barometric pressure, and it's something I always mention to people. And there's a lot of people, even if they've been fishing their whole lives, they don't know about it. So you'll hear fishermen talk about, hey, I got this great spot, and some days I can catch, 20, 30, 40 fish. And some days I catch 0 or 1, even with the exact same presentation, the exact same setup. And with fishing, all fish, if you're going to eat the fish and you're going to open it up, you will see an air sac. They have a little air sac inside of their stomach, and it controls their buoyancy, right? So maybe a fish wants to hang out, in 20 feet of water, or maybe wants to hang out in 60 feet of water, much lower in the water column. And so there's a reason that they have that air sac, evolution or however they ended up with it, they have one, right? So it has an air sac inside of it. Now, the best way to relay this to an individual is, well, there's two. If you've ever heard like your uncle, or even, I'm getting a little older myself, and I can sort of feel it in some of my joints, but there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, there's a storm coming, and they know because they got something, they got their knee, they have bad knee, or they have, bad joints in their fingers. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. They've got, so they can feel what's called the atmospheric pressure, or barometric pressure, which comes in the weather report. It's always in the weather report. So if you're fishing, this is a very important thing. And so what happens is there's the pressure of the atmosphere, which if you're young and you don't have bad joints, you can't feel it. But the best way to relay it to somebody is if you ever swam, like jumped off of a diving board and swam and tried to grab a coin off the bottom of a swimming pool, your ears hurt, your brain hurts. It's like that's the pressure of the water.
The deeper you go.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's the pressure of the water that's pushing down inside of your head. And so it'd be like trying to take a math test when you're at the bottom of a swimming pool and your head hurts. So when the barometric pressure is high, that pressure is pushing down on that air sac inside of their stomach. It's almost like they have a stomach ache. That's probably the best way to put it, is they have a tummy ache. So you may, and the weather, it's a good indicator. If bad weather, like stormy weather, means low pressure, which means better fishing in general, but they're not 100% related. You could have bad weather with high pressure. So you always want to check either an app on your phone or just ask Google, you know, what is the barometric pressure? And it doesn't fluctuate that much. It fluctuates from about 28 point, and the points are important, 28 point, let's just say 20.0 up to 31.0. But that minor fluctuation, and it's unfortunate that the scale is so small because it only goes up 2 or 3 points. It fluctuates between 2 or 3 points, and then never goes beyond those two. But you know, fishing at 30.1 is going to be super hard to catch a fish because it's almost like they're underwater trying to do math. They're not hungry at all. Their stomachs hurt because they're getting compressed. That air sac is just getting squeezed.
Okay.
And so it's very challenging to catch fish in that situation. Whereas on a low pressure day, which maybe it's only 29.1, 29.6 or something like that, but it's lower, then they've relaxed. Their stomach is fine. They're hungry, and you can catch a lot more fish. That's why you see people like, I mean, it happens all the time where you say, man, I caught 20 fish yesterday at this exact spot with, you know, this bait or this lure, whatever it may be. And then they go back the next day and they catch, either they get skunked, which is really unfortunate, or they catch 1 or 2. And they don't really know why. Why would that happen, you know? And if you're not watching the weather, that can happen to you, you know, and it really will help you understand what are the best days to go fishing. Now, of course, if you're just fishing for fun and you just want to go out and relax, you know, go fishing anytime that you can. That's what they say. You know, that's kind of the big thing in fishing is, you know, a day fishing is better than a day working every single time, no matter what, even if you don't catch a fish, you know.
Now, how does that vary? How does that vary when you're ice fishing as opposed to fishing on a nice spring day?
You know, so the atmospheric pressure doesn't really have it is across all seasons. So the pressure, because you know, it's like the guy with a bad knee. You know, doesn't matter if it's wintertime, he can tell storm's coming. Doesn't matter if it's summertime, he can tell storm's coming because his knee is telling him. He can feel the pressure. So and I'm glad you mentioned that because it doesn't really, it's kind of a good guideline if you were to say, okay, well, it's kind of stormy today, so it probably is low, or it's super sunny. Like if you look outside and it is a crystal clear blue sky day, generally that means the pressure is really, really high and you're not going to catch very many fish. It's actually better to have kind of a storm. However, they're closely related. I would say closely related.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that stuff what the question was, but they're closely related. They're closely related, but they're not 100% related. That's why you always have to check it because it could be crystal clear and high, and it could be crystal clear and low. But in general, the cloudier, the stormier is better. But you always got to check it because you never know. It could, you know, it could be cloudy and stormy and be super high. The atmospheric pressure, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't know exactly what creates this, but I just know that it's part of the weather report and it's easy to find out what it is. And for those of you out there, especially if you've got like a really hot fishing spot or somewhere that you like to go all the time, or like Provo River when I was a little kid, and some days we'd catch a ton of fish and some days we wouldn't, you know. And back then I didn't know, but that pressure, I mean, you can, especially with folks that have fish finders, we use fish finders a lot. You know, we don't always use them, but you know, I mean, we like to use them because it gives you extra edge, right? Just like anything. And you know, with those fish finders, you could be on a high pressure day, you could be right on top of a whole school of fish. And what you have to do on a high pressure day, you still can catch fish. You're not going to catch very many, but what you have to get is what's called reaction strike. So the fish is not hungry at all. What you have to do is you have to, I guess, annoy it or piss it off. So you want to use something with a lot of rattle, a lot of sound, and you want to be right there in the face. And what you're looking for, if you're trying to catch fish on a high pressure day, is a reaction bite. So you want to mimic a fish that is agitating the school, and so a fish will bite it because it just wants to kill it. It's not even hungry. It wants to just kill this agitating thing that's floating around wherever they're at.
Sure.
And so it's just, you know, you really got to be mindful. And if you know, there's some guide services, and I just want to talk about this just very briefly here. There's some guide services that I know of that they will do everything they can to reschedule or to move a guided tour if the barometric pressure is too high, because they know it's just going to be a challenge to catch fish, and that's not going to be a great experience for the people that are paying for the guide, you know, paying for the trip.
Yeah.
And so they do everything they can, because those, you know, that pressure is, I believe, and I'm not going to get into it on this podcast, but I believe the barometric pressure is more important than the moon phase. It's more important than, I mean, just about every other aspect of fishing, just because when that pressure's high, oh man,
They're out.
it is extremely challenging to catch fish. So that, you know, that's kind of the whole thing about barometric pressure, is just watch it, and you will see, you know, if you document your fishing trips and see how many fish you catch, and just document, you know, what was the pressure that day. The barometric pressure, I think, is probably the #1 indicator of how many fish you can catch that day. There's a lot of other factors, tons of other ones, but if that barometric pressure is too high, those fish, they just basically, it's like doing math at the bottom of a swimming pool. You know, it's very challenging, and if you can avoid fishing on those days and say, okay, hey, I'm gonna, especially if you're looking at doing guide servicing, that's a huge one for people that may be looking into that career of guiding.
Yeah.
Just, you know, if somebody has a bad experience, they're not going to share it with their friend, or they will share it with their friends. You're not going to get much more business. But if you can watch that pressure and start to understand it, and even, you know, I'm not going to get into it today, but water temperature is another one. But barometric pressure, even way beyond water temperature, barometric pressure is humongous for fishing. And if you watch it, you can plan your days, right? So if I look at the forecast and I say, okay, today's high, tomorrow's high, but the next day's low, I can go and catch, like I did last night. You know, I caught 25, 30, maybe somewhere between 25 and 30 catfish, right? Wow. And it was just one after another. Bing, 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 bing. You know, the poles are just going off. And then, you know, if the pressure was high, it would be super, super slow night. You know, maybe catch 2 or 3. But so that's kind of the thing, is you just watch it, you keep your eye on it, and then you know, at least you know what you're getting into. You know, and you can still go fishing. I still go fishing on high pressure days.
Just to get out.
That's what I have planned, you know, and I'm just going with my buddies. I'm not taking any folks out. I'm just going out to hang out. I just know that it's going to be slow, you know, so I'm not, it just helps me understand what I'm getting into. And if maybe I get a reaction bite, maybe not, you know, and I could get skunked. And, you know, that's one thing that people may misunderstand about somebody like me, somebody who fishes professionally, is that, you know, I get skunked sometimes, you know, but I know why. That's the important part, is that I know why I'm being skunked. If the pressure was super, super high, I would know that I had a good chance of getting skunked, but I'm still going to go fishing just because I want to go hang out with my buddies. But, you know, that's kind of what makes you a really good angler, I think, is understanding why you didn't catch fish.
It's the conditions. Much like when you're going out hunting, the weather conditions, the time of year, if they're in rut, they're not in rut, what's getting them running. Basically the same thing. There's factors for each sport. But we're running out of time here.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up then.
Read more about this in the summer issue of American Outdoor News. Josh, where else can we find you besides in American Outdoor News?
So, but my last name's hard to spell, but if you just type in, it's Bendoski Power Fishing, but you don't even need to put power fishing. My last name is unique enough that just putting in, I'm going to spell it for you. It's B as in boy, ENDOSKI. You just put that into the internet, and you'll be able to find me on YouTube, Instagram, you know, a lot of the fishing apps like Fish Finder. There's a few others, but just type that in if you're into fishing, and you'll find us. And you know what we try to do is just give as much information and tips as we can, just
Mhm.
to help people catch more fish. You know, when I was a kid, I learned how to fish, but it took time. And you know, if I had had a resource, I don't want to say how old I am, but it was before the internet for
I
sure. When
got
I
more
was
time on you. I got a few years on you.
yeah, you have a little bit more on me, but I didn't have the internet, you know. And then now, with the age of the internet, you can just find so much information. And I just want to help people catch more fish. I want to help people have an amazing time fishing. And depending on your region, we are going to start probably this spring a series of fishing tournaments. And so look for that. You know, probably youth tournaments. We could do grown-up ones, but youth tournaments is probably where we're going to head with it. Either way, so yeah, check us out online. Just type in Bendoski, and you'll find us everywhere.
Okay, great. I appreciate your time, and I will look forward to your article, and I'll speak to you soon.
Great.
Let me just